butter chicken, starting with chicken thigh fillets. No skin, no bone. Now I'm going to do this with a caveat and say that I can only dumb down a recipe so much, so it's quite a sophisticated butter chicken spicing, but the kids love it and it's really easy. So the chicken pieces are quite, I'm cutting them quite large. That's for two reasons. One, I'm a little lazy, and two, it is going to cook down a little bit. So once the chicken has been cut, the next step is the marinade. You can do this overnight. For most dishes, I've got a lot of forethought and foresight, but for some reason, when it comes to butter chicken, I never leave time to marinate. So this is how I do it. So that's a cup and a half of yogurt for 800 grams of chicken. And this is enough to feed 4 people with rice. So I'm just gonna pop the chicken in, just get it through there with my hands. And then this is the spicing. So spicing in this butter chicken occurs in 2 parts. There's whole spice that goes into the pan and gets tempered with mustard oil. And then there's the ground and dried spice that goes into this yogurt and butter chicken recipe, and this all goes in once that spice has been tempered. All right, you ready? This is a bit of a thing. So I'm going to put my salt in here. So I'm going to say a teaspoon of fine pink salt, and then a 3/4 teaspoon of a fine white salt. The reason for 2 salts is that because the mouth will experience each salt slightly differently, because they are different salts, I can put a little bit more in and it's not going to sit in the one space, so there won't be overwhelm. There's a strated sodium feeling throughout the dish. I can be more generous with salt because I use 2 different types. Next up is heat and pepper. So butter chicken by nature isn't super spicy, so we're going to use a soft chilli here. So this is a Kashmiri chilli. So it has a lovely soft smoky floral heat. Anyone who follows my recipes will know how much I love it, and I use it all the time. So a 1/2 teaspoon. The thing about chilli is it doesn't just add heat, it gives the dish height and elegance. That's not enough because there's so much flavour, there's so much yogurt, and there'll be butter in there as well, that I need to push forward that chilli a little bit. So 1/3 teaspoon of cracked black pepper, 1/3 teaspoon of fine white pepper, and just a 1/4 teaspoon of a medium to hot ground chilli. And that's just going to create a little bit of fire density, so heat density that's mellow and elongated and that isn't sharp and fiery. We're going to bed this down with a little bit of ground ginger, always ground ginger, 1/3 teaspoon. We need some bitterness in here for structure. So I'm going to use 1/3 teaspoon of turmeric and a 1/4 teaspoon of fennel. Sorry, not fennel, 1/4 teaspoon of fenugreek. Fennel comes now. A 1/2 teaspoon of fennel seed, 2 teaspoons of cumin seed, yum. And then a little bit of ground cumin just to create a little bit more depth and darkness. Now these are earth spices, fennel, cumin seed and ground. That's 1/3 teaspoon. And what those earth spices do is they create a weight density in the masala blend that helps all of the other aromatic structure to find a space to bed down and to disperse. So that's your mid-palate kind of spectrum of flavour. That is this portion of the dish. So what I'm going to do is stir this through and just leave it to sit while I prepare the wet spice and also the whole spice, which will be tempered together in the pan. Do you want to get a close of this?
It's like your candy stores.
I love it, and I do it differently every time. So this is a recipe, but you know. And this just gets massaged through. So one of the reasons we use yogurt with meat is because yogurt has a slight acidic quality and it tenderizes the meat as well. So this is going to be a really soft end result. So I'm going to get out my heavy based pot. Okay, so this is the wet spice going into the pan. Now wet spice is what I call fresh spice, I guess. And I call it wet because it has that mouthfeel and it goes to different places on the palate than dried and ground spice does. So it's nice to use the two together, fresh spice and dried spice, because they create a kind of a flavour tier in the dish. Also, fresh spice tends to be astringent. And when you're dealing with yogurt and chicken, which are both quite dense flavour profiles, having lots of astringent flavour in there helps the other spice to be seen against the backdrop of something that's so dense and opaque. Okay, so a white onion, but only half, because this is a big onion. And I don't want the onion to dominate. That's going to go in. A couple of cloves of garlic. So 3 cloves. Again, this will be a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of astringent and acidic quality even. Now this is where the whole spice comes into it. This is kind of a bit of a holy trinity of whole spice in terms of Kashmiri style cooking. Oh my God, that onion. Woo! So bay leaf, cinnamon, cassia and clove. That's 4, so it's not a trinity. But you know what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to put 3 bay leaves in, 1 cinnamon quill and about half a dozen clove. Crack open a few of these cardamom pods with my little cardamom cracker. So there's about 4 or 5 pods in here. And then into that pan is going to go about 2 tablespoons of mustard oil. Maybe 3 tablespoons of mustard oil. And I'm going to heat that on the stove. This is on a medium-high heat, and it's releasing all of its fragrance. So I don't want to cook that till the onions particularly softened or caramelized. I'm just releasing the fragrance of the spice. So have a little look into this pot here, because this is what you want it to look like when you add in the chicken and yogurt. And then the yogurt chicken with the spices is going to come in and just sizzle. So get all of this out, because this is carrying a lot of the flavour. And come and check it out. Rich, yummy deliciousness. We're going to turn it down, medium heat actually, for around 20 minutes. And then once the chicken's looking lovely and cooked, you want to turn the heat down a little bit more so that as it keeps cooking, it's tender. The kids are home from school. Hi. 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 So cute. Was it freezing? Huh? Oh my gosh. All right. This is the stage I was telling you about. I've cooked it on sort of a medium heat for around 15 to 20 minutes, and you can see now, if you come close to the pot, have a little look at the chicken, and the texture of the chicken is starting to shrink, which is what it does when it cooks. But when it starts to shrink, you want to turn the heat down, because otherwise what's going to happen is it's actually going to shrink too fast and tighten and lose some of its tenderness. This is essentially ready. You could keep cooking it if you wanted it for another 30 or 40 minutes, and it would cook down and intensify, but I kind of like that it's quite fresh and light. So I'm just going to finish it off over at the bench. So this is the things that you can do off the pot at the end, just to create a richer character in the food. So this is just a salted butter, so around a tablespoon. Then garam masala, which goes in at the end. I'm going to put a shy teaspoon in there, and that just needs a little bit of heat to release, which it will do on its own. And taste test. Oh, that's so divine. The butter really smooths out the spice in the end, and it just becomes just really broad and delicious and enveloping. The garam masala is warmth, so I can feel that there's a nutmeg quality. I can taste bay leaf, that astringent nature of bay leaf. Cardamom's definitely there, but the overall effect is creamy and buttery and softly spiced with a really deep, long flavour last. And honestly, the cooking part of it is fairly simple. It's the spicing that you need to pay attention to. Oh, the last thing I forgot. A little bit of fresh coriander. That's brightness. In this context as well, it will taste a little sweet, which is nice. Yeah, nailed it. Coriander has a citric quality as well, so it's almost lemony at the end there, which is really delicious. Look at my messy bowl. Better than a takeaway.